This is Out of Left Field podcast with episode Who Even Knows Anymore? And of course, as is the most important thing of all, technology.
The internet economy.
For anyone who's bothered to read the title of this podcast, you already know what we're going to be talking about, so really I don't need to introduce it to you. You already have that information.
Yes, that's what the internet is good for, information.
Yes, informing you or your friends about you or your friends.
I sometimes wonder if the internet is compatible with capitalism. Because in some ways it really is, because it can expand markets, it can increase commerce and blah, blah, blah. But there's also things of just being able to copy files and copyright infringement and decentralization of information, which poses a threat to it. So I think it's a really interesting environment that capitalism is placed in.
Yeah, sure, it's interesting. I mean, the internet is a massive thing at the end of the day, and it is including more and more things every day. There is seemingly no end to the things that it will just gobble up and absorb into itself. And I think there's definitely a lot of examples of things in the internet and in the internet economy, I guess, that seem, at least on the face of it, incompatible with capitalism. Like you said, file sharing. There's a lot of stuff going on the internet that seems not necessarily anti-profiteering, but kind of this. There seems to be this idea that information should, how do I put it, be free.
Yeah, well, there's two opposing forces. There's the people that want to use the internet for what it's supposed to be used for, sharing information, and then also capitalism and companies trying to put barriers on that and put up paywalls and profit off of it. So, I mean, there's this need for profitability because, websites and the internet, it doesn't pay for itself. But there's also the fact that you can just copy and paste something and you don't have to necessarily charge you every time you do that. So
it's so much cheaper to, whether it's movies, books, music, blueprints, design ideas, even just general sort of concepts for other things. Like, just any idea you have or anyone can have is available on the internet, really. Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of innovation going on now, but it seems like the efficiency of the internet, beyond all the fun things you can do on it, is that all it takes is for one person to have a good idea for then everyone else to be able to benefit from that good idea.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. And, if you're, say, a small business person, you can open up a small e-commerce site and sell your wares and your knitted sweaters or your pants or whatever, or your teacups.
Whatever foppish nonsense people sell on the internet.
It can open up commerce. It can almost democratize the economy in a way.
Yeah, but has it though? I mean, this is the thing, right? I mean, we're talking about like how it's cheaper and easier to get into, and yet when we're talking about, I guess this is sort of like the information economy. How do people actually make a living in the information economy?
Well, in tons of ways, but I think that the general tendencies of capitalism do play out on the internet as well, where we see the monopolization of companies, big major companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon.
Yeah. Whatever Google is on the internet, it's more than just a monopoly.
It is its own classification.
Yeah. It's like a super monopoly. They run all the toll booths, basically.
Yeah.
They get to be the ones who, more than anyone else, can claim reasonably that they can actually be a productive part of the information economy.
Well, sure, and it's not just Google, but you see the same thing with internet service providers, say Comcast in the United States, or like the big four like Shaw, Bell, Rogers here, and also with hosting providers where you have EIG that's eating up tons of smaller hosting providers and trying to corner the market, where the same tendencies of mergers and monopoly capitalism and laying off excess workers plays out probably even more so in the internet economy. In spite of all its other great opportunities that it provides, also has the same faults as other things, right? And sometimes it can be even easier for companies to do that because tech companies can be located anywhere. We can also see companies that we classify as part of the tech sector, like Uber, for example, that are actively eating away at traditional forms of employment that we've seen, where there's this broader casualization of employment, what a lot of people call the sharing economy, but what I would argue is actually just kind of undermining proper formal employment, and benefits, and the salaried positions, and that sort of thing.
Sure, I think that it is it's like the modern version of like the 1990s the 1990s idea about the information economy. That none of us really have to work anymore. We can all just be involved in selling information to each other. And there's this sort of idea that the sharing economy, that if we are all just kind of, Uber employees, or we're all employees of every company everywhere, then that sort of equalizes things somehow. And I think there's this kind of there's an honest and obvious desire for people who are appealing to these kinds of things, that they want things to work differently. That there's obviously problems with the economy. If only everyone worked for Uber, we could have some problems solved. And the problem is, I guess, is that for all that you can talk about the benefits of Uber, as far as being cheaper, at the end of the day, these kinds of things are cheaper when they have to be. All that we end up with at the end of the day is the lower paying jobs, and then the cost of using Uber just goes up to make up the difference at
once
the end.
They've monopolized the market.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the irony that I find about this, because people that are highly supportive of this new economy, I work in the high tech sector. They are great jobs, and they do offer really good employment. On the other hand, supporters of the future economy say like to view it as sort of decentralizing things, making it more in a sort of democratic way. But really what ends up happening is you still have monopoly capitalism. You still have companies that corner the market, like Google, like Uber, and they end up just functioning like any other company would under capitalist rules, where profitability is the main issue for them.
What does Uber have that makes them worth joining? They have the copyright to software. They have the right to use that information in a private way. That's it. That's the driver base is meaningless, and that's kind of the whole point. And what the company has as a real and true asset is the recognition of its property rights to this software and this idea.
Well, yes, and the fact that they can undercut traditional taxi companies by, say, not having real employees, not giving benefits to their workers, not giving them paid leave, not giving them maternity leave, not giving them proper sick pay.
Yeah, well, they don't get any of that. They're not employees.
Exactly.
They are fun employees.
They are scabs.
Well, sure they are, but they're like treating them like this is some kind of fun, exciting, hobby.
You're
almost
part of our,
family team. Definitely not an employee, though.
Yeah, you're not that good.
No.
But no, I mean, I think Uber is really the best example of how the say quote unquote sharing economy can go totally sideways, where you have not only this company that isn't giving their employees, or not employees, proper employment, say, but also that they're undermining other jobs.
Well, it's not to say that the taxi industry is
admirable,
or even functioning in a rational way.
Well, no, I get it, and that's I do kind of have mixed feelings about Uber, because on the other hand, they are forcing taxi companies to get with the times and to try to modernize and make their service less shitty, but they're also doing it in a way where, like, Uber has finally found themselves in a position where they can charge people $1,000 for a ride home on New Year's Eve, so they just do that because they can.
Well, why not? Right?
Well, that's the point.
That's the thing.
So it's not a democratization of the economy at all.
If it was, this would, and not to jump the gun here, but the software and the design for Uber could just as easily, within, say, another form of economy, be open source. That you could have literally any municipality just running its own version of Uber on the basis of the labor standards that it wishes to set for itself.
That sounds awesome.
Well, you could. There is nothing technological that is inhibiting that. It is entirely political and like class relations and economic relations that's inhibiting that.
Well, the fact that any company that say a municipality wanted to set that up, they would still maybe have to compete with Uber over rates, and I don't know. But
Well, sure, but it's much like the internet. You can't. The internet is useful because it doesn't screw people over at every opportunity. It's useful because it is an open platform on which information can be shared without having to worry about every step along the way. And the problem is that every step along the way is a opportunity to make profits. So capitalism will inevitably be trying to find a way to wheedle in there, no matter whether it's paywalls or ISPs or whatever. But they will be looking for some kind of way to break the internet in order to make it more profitable.
Well, if you look at every major media revolution and technological advancement over the last 100 years, whether it was newspaper or radio or television or the
VCRs,
internet, every single time it started out as this great way that everyone could contribute and voice. We had like public access television and community radio stations, and given enough time and given the market and economic circumstances, they will always tend towards corporate ownership and monopoly over the industry, where inevitably you end up with fucking monstrosities like Comcast and Post Media that are just completely out of control and completely unrepresentative of the initial ideal that these ideas were founded on. And I think that's, capitalism is completely to blame here. So I think that in some ways the internet is to ask, is the internet compatible with capitalism? It's like almost asking, well, what kind of internet do you want to have, right? Well, sure, you can have the internet either way, but it's going to exhibit whatever kinds of qualities that its environment has.
We're going to go back to AOL, is basically what he's saying.
Well, no, I'm not saying that at all.
Well, that's sort of the more capitalist version of it. It seems like this kind of truncated internet where, you have the premium internet and then like the free-ish internet, and
where you get charged by the megabyte.
Yeah, the problem is, of course, I don't think the internet can really be broken up that easily. Maybe I'm wrong, I guess.
What do you mean broken up?
Well, I mean like where it could come down to there being like certain, say, sections of the internet you get as part of a package. For instance, like cable, right? That there are websites that can pay to be in like the basic package, and those would be the most popular.
That would be horrible, though.
Well, that's
the tendency. That's what like, cable companies want.
Yeah, but what
right?
I'm saying is that I think in the case of the internet, it would just create this what's been happening with things like AdBlock, for instance, where there's this arms race between the two of them, where one side comes up with a way of stopping AdBlock or stopping people from just accessing information without really paying for it, and then the other side basically just finding a new way to do the same thing they did before. I mean, even if they were to truncate the internet to the point where, if you go to your ISP, you get the top 10,000 websites that are willing to pay to be included in the basic package. Inside those websites would just be a bunch of awful shit going on. Like, people would just be using that and abusing those websites to use that as just like almost an underground internet. There's no way to stop people from ruining all of these attempts to curtail information.
Well, that's just the thing. It's like, I mean, it reminds me of Netflix and their international licensing agreements, where you can access certain things from certain countries, and people use VPNs to get around it.
Yeah.
So Netflix wants to have a sort of war on VPNs, but they also acknowledge at the same time that it's fucking impossible and it can't happen.
And it even helps them to some extent.
Well, that's just the thing about the internet, is that people will always find a way to get around whatever paywalls or whatever things that the capitalist, say, faction wants to extort out of the internet users, right? And, I can, definitely say, especially from a computer security point of view, there is always going to be another flaw. There will always be flaws,
yeah.
And there will always be a way to get around whatever attempts. In fact, the DMCA takedowns have given up because they found that it was costing them more money to issue all of these complaints and these lawsuits against sites than they were actually saving. Because they weren't really saving anything, because for every website that they took down that was sharing copyright infringement material, 5 or 10 more sprung up because they took that other one down.
And then you got people even like Kim.com and stuff like that, where they go after like a big name in the whole in the whole file sharing world, and it all just kind of unravels when they actually try to justify any of it.
Yeah.
Like it I mean, I think in that case at least they managed to they probably came out ahead as far as cost versus reward goes, probably. But even in that case, it was just kind of it was just funny how rapidly it all fell apart, and how rapidly most of it was just online immediately anyway. There's just, I mean, best case scenario, you just shut down the internet and turn it into like a, I don't know, advertising slideshow. Like that's literally what you would have to do to stop the internet from being a tool for
what it wants to be.
Yeah, for what it wants to be. Like, it's just, and this is, I guess, where I get, when you talk about, like, is the internet incompatible with capitalism? I would say absolutely yes, regardless of what you want the internet to be. The internet is just this, all about a kind of flexibility of communication that capitalism really can't comprehend. Even
it wants to stifle it every
doesn't
step.
Understand. It just doesn't get why is it that people do, if you give away information, that will stifle creativity. If you give away profitable opportunities, that'll stifle the economy, when in fact that's the exact opposite. That what the internet provides is a platform on which people can be creative. People can find economic opportunities for themselves that are easier than out in the real world, out in just sort of the regular world. It is, and I don't like use. I mean, this is so lame, and I almost kind of don't want to say this.
Go on.
But it is, it is like the roads. It is like a highway. The highways only work.
The internet superhighway.
Yes. The internet superhighway doesn't work like a regular highway doesn't work if it's just full of toll booths. If it is covered in like paywalls that you have to work through to get to use.
Yeah.
The roads are useful because they can just be used, and that helps the rest of the economy.
Yeah. No, you're right. But, I mean, capitalism, of course, wants to profit off of the internet and wants to, as you said before, wheedle itself into every possible opportunity, and it pisses people off, and it turns them to other alternatives,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guarantee you if Netflix decided to start serving advertisements to its customers, there would be a competitor service that would spring up overnight and would get, probably a third of its customers in just as long.
Well, maybe. The problem, of course, there is that we're looking at a situation where once again, what Uber has is not a good service. It has the right to use this software. In the case of Netflix, what does Netflix have? I mean, it doesn't have a good service, although it may or may not have that depending on sort of your opinions.
What do you mean it doesn't have a good service?
I mean, it has the right to distribute those programs.
Well, they have servers too.
Yeah, well, the server's fine, but I'm saying that from a property standpoint, what makes Netflix significant is that it has the legal right to be selling people these shows. So you talk about like what happens if Netflix includes advertising. I would say, well, probably people will either have to just suck it up or get these programs illegally, because it's not like a new service could just pop up and have that library of programs. They do not have the legal right to do that.
Right. Well, I would pretty much guarantee you that people would choose the obtaining this illegally option.
Probably. Well, that is already what they're doing, and it, for all that, like, Netflix loves to tout the fact that it's helping stop piracy, it's still going on. I mean, the problem with Netflix is that it still costs money. It's still a service you have to pay for, and depending on what program you actually want to watch, they might not even have it.
Well, that's the biggest problem. But I mean, what Netflix does provide that, say, torrent sites can't is a mostly guaranteed security, where
Yeah.
you can stream videos from their site, and it's not like what you want to watch.su/streaming dot some weird file.php.
Kazakhstan or Ethiopia or the Maldives.
And I, like anyone else, has at some point stooped so low as to stream something off a Somali domain. But it was a good show, and I really wanted to watch it.
It was all in good faith. I thought that it was legit. All right, the fact that it turned out to be just the first 3 seconds repeated over and over for 40 minutes.
Okay, but what's another interesting topic about the, say, tech economy is how it contrasts with, like, say, manufacturing jobs, right?
Yeah.
Because in the Western world, we've seen a trend that on one hand we see traditional middle class jobs like manufacturing and stuff, for example, that are being laid waste to, but we have on the other areas of the economy, we have tech sector is growing, and they're really good, well-paying salary jobs. And the service sector, part-time, contractual, casual labor, which pays like shit, and they're worse jobs, is growing probably faster than that.
Now,
right?
You say tech sector, and I think it's worth just sort of making this clear right now. I don't think that that is clearly understood, the distinction between the service sector and the tech sector. Like, if you have someone working in a computer store selling computer parts, maybe to other people who are computer savvy, like that his job, for instance, may be to sell dedicated servers, right? I mean, is that a sales job? Yes. Is it a service job? Well, based on the fact that it's sales, most people just say yes. But when you talk about, like, the tech industry, it's always from the standpoint of those being skilled jobs.
Right.
And I do think, conversely, there are also tech industry jobs that are not skilled, such as in just sort of
basic customer support,
phone service, phone trees sort of stuff, where you're processing complaints or customer service, depending on the kind of company you work for.
So basically you sit at a computer all day, but it's not technically a tech job.
Yeah, that you can sit at a computer all day, and you maybe do computer work all day, and then of course you get in things like, well, what about office work? Is that tech industry?
Right.
I mean, does that?
Well, I mean, computers are used for everything. So at what point do you classify something as tech and what is not?
But I guess what I'm saying is that the distinction you seem to be making here between service and tech is that tech are those skilled, relatively high-paying jobs. Service industry, as you said, part-time, casualized. Like that there is a kind of a weakness to it as far as pay and things like that go, and that the tech industry proper are those skilled acolytes and
acolytes,
people like yourself, for instance.
Yeah, thanks.
That would be those webmasters, we might call them.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's really fair, because a lot of that stuff, the general trend within capitalism is to find the way in which an industry can be made less. That skills in those industries can be made less necessary.
And isn't tech the best way to do that?
But
through automation.
Yeah,
right?
through automation, through
robotics,
through all sorts of things. I mean, then that gets into other stuff like, how many people could be employed if you weren't running scripts?
Yeah,
like
a lot more.
A lot more. Now, is that good or bad? Well,
it's bad because
it's bad because those
annoying shitty work.
But that's crap work, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
but
repetitive
it's also
bullshit.
More employment.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying here is like this: the tech industry is unfortunate or not. I don't think it really escapes the problem of where manufacturing has gone in the past. Where that it has become less skillful, and it has eventually then moved away from the West into countries where it's just cheaper.
Can do it cheaper, like the Philippines.
Yeah. So
I mean, if you really if you wanted to create manufacturing jobs, like the most amount of manufacturing jobs per capita, you would build things out of toothpicks and with the toothbrushes. That was meticulously detailed and unnecessarily. You might as well automate it. Get a fucking tractor or whatever, right?
Well, there's nothing. Look, there's nothing wrong with I'm not one of these petty bourgeois types who wants everything I own to be fucking handmade. Okay, I'm not interested in that. When we're talking about machinery, when we're talking about equipment, when we're talking about the fucking clothes on my back, What concerns me most is the amount of time that went into it. Like, we're talking about people's lives at the end of the day. And whether we're looking at a website or whether we're looking at a physical thing in reality, I think that the only rational way of judging the effectiveness or the value or the sort of morality of it is to look at the amount of time it took.
Yeah, but if you can do something in the identical thing in half as amount of time, if you automated
that's
it,
time people actually have that they can use. Now, it just so happens in capitalism that doesn't matter.
Well, sure.
It's all about making it cheaper, right? And so, to me at least, that's one of the more obvious examples of where capitalism has reached a limit, where it's not able to consistently it's not able to consistently reduce the amount of time we have to work, and it's not able to maintain itself on the basis of this more productive labor that we're doing now than we were, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Well, it's almost that the internet and the high-tech economy is too efficient, that that computers are so efficient that if we had an economic system where people didn't get laid off when things got more efficient, people would just have more free time, then that would be great. But in the competitive, profit-seeking capitalist economy that we have, every advancement of technology, every new thing that we automate, every new thing that we do better, actually, at the end of the day, ends up with less people being employed. And that's a fundamental problem that it has. But, on the other hand, this automation is solving the issues of having to do repetitive, shitty work that sucks, that nobody likes. And so, in that sense, it's good, but in the sense that, people's jobs depend on this repetitive, shitty work, it's bad, right? So, really, the issue is not automation or technology. The problem is capitalism.
Well, yeah, you can't be anti-technology. I mean, this is where, sort of to take a bit of a side note here, I guess. We're talking about manufacturing, but we could be talking about farming. And a lot of people have sort of appealed to farming as simpler, less efficient farming methods as better, right?
A lot of people?
Oh, yeah. Well, when you talk about organic or local or whatever, but
right,
the idea being that, it doesn't matter if it's people, the time spent isn't as important as how that time is spent.
Right.
The problem, though, is that, for me at least, capitalism isn't really concerned with that, so we have a problem right there. But for me, as a socialist, my concern isn't really even the profitability of those industries, but how people are spending their time. I mean, if 2/3 of the population has to spend its time doing repetitive, mind-numbing work, I cannot imagine how that is somehow going to benefit society as a whole.
But everyone's employed, man.
Yeah, well,
it's perfect.
Everyone's employed, but it's more than that. It's more than just the fact that everyone needs to be employed.
Something.
Not just work should mean something, but that there should never be a point in anyone's life where what they're doing is just arbitrary bullshit. The only thing worse than a repetitive job is one where your job doesn't actually matter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that reminds me of, when you go to the grocery store, you have the choice between choosing the clerk or the automated machine, and somehow I always find myself choosing the actual person because I kind of don't want to see them lose their jobs.
Well, that's political, right? I mean, that's where we talk about who is running the economy, who is running society, and it just so happens that the decisions being made are being run by a class, capitalists, right, all that sort of stuff, that isn't at all interested in how many people are employed, but just the profitability of it. If you could, this is sort of where I think technology has been used as a crutch, as politics has kind of waned in significance in people's minds. The technological solutions have been presented as a way of getting around how politically disinterested a lot of people are. So that you have things like, in the case of Silicon Valley and that sort of thing, where the outlook of a lot of the people who are founding these amazing companies is that capitalism is great. It solves all these problems. Look how efficient it is at these new economies that it's producing. The whole idea of getting rid of those people and those jobs is seen by them as perfectly good and perfectly reasonable because, obviously it's the creators and the idea makers that matter. So why should anyone be working at a checkout counter? Those people are just losers who don't deserve to have a job.
Well, of course, the irony is that there aren't really any other jobs for them to have, and they kind of depend on that, right? And also, I mean, we see that logic played out in San Francisco a lot, where you have people being priced out of their homes and their apartments, because people that work in Silicon Valley are rich and rent out apartments in downtown San Francisco, and over the course of 10 years, people are being completely priced out of their homes where they've lived for a long time, and it's creating it's creating tension between these two classes of different working class people, where you have people that work in the service sector that are getting fucked over, and people that have these highly skilled jobs and the tech knowledge who are able to reap the benefits of it, and they're sort of pricing out the people that aren't part of this high skilled economy. And so even though these two groups of people really should be on the same side, they're fighting each other because of the contradictions within the economy and people's skills and the way that capitalism works. So really, I think that technology should be something that unites everyone, that can help everyone work less, because that's really the ideal. But in a private market system, that we see all these contradictions being played out.
Yeah, there's that for all that technology has been presented as a panacea, for all that it's been presented as a solution to the world's problems, it has done nothing to change the basic contradictions or conflicts in society. That there are still people who are very poor, there are still people who are very disenfranchised, and there are still people who, have influence well beyond reason, really.
Well, and this is ignoring the billions of people that don't have access to the internet or clean water or electricity.
The way things are going these days, they'll have internet before they have clean water.
Yeah, no
which
shit.
I think is as good a indictment of capitalism as anything.
Yeah.
The idea that a cell phone is an easier thing for capitalism to produce than apartment buildings or indoor plumbing. That somehow it is literally cheaper, right? But at the same time, there's this attitude that a lot of people still have, that there's like a hierarchy of social development, and computers are right near the top. And yet that's not true. I mean, computers are these days at least really cheap and plentiful, and you can just get one for practically nothing, if not nothing. And so there's this weird kind of I don't know what you call it, combined and uneven development, to use a term, where the whole world has been computerized, but not much else. That we all have a computer, but we don't all have really anything. Consistent electricity, even. The whole world can have a cell phone, but we're already developing technology that doesn't even seem to be applied anywhere in a consistent way. Things like 3D printers was the biggest one, right? Where 3D printers have been in the news. They've been talked about the same way the cloud has been talked about. There's just like this amazing technology.
Don't use that word with me, Mac.
All right. Anyway,
the cloud.
The cloud. Yeah, of course. I won't mention the cloud any more than I need to. Anyway, just like the cloud, 3D printers are one of those things, like 3D glasses. Like, there's been so many things in the news over the last few years that have been mentioned as like revolutionary technology that will completely change the way you see the world around you, even, and yet where are they? Where are the 3D printers? What the fuck happened?
Well, they're still kind of hobbyist machines.
Yeah, but
though.
why? What is taking so fucking long?
I think the main issue actually with 3D printers was there was some kind of patent on them, wasn't it? that like expired?
Oh, that's great. Well, yeah. Sure.
That's another thing, by the way. I think patents should be completely fucking abolished. Benjamin Franklin himself disagreed with patents. One of the most
Benjamin Franklin,
one of the most famous inventors ever. I've been told.
Oh yeah. Well, you can name the one thing he invented, right? That everyone is vaguely aware of.
The kite.
The correct answer is bifocals. But sure, he might as well have invented the kite for all that the normal understanding of him is. Look, I don't care what Benjamin Franklin said. I think there is a definite case to be made that patents are a complete waste of time. The problem, of course, is that they're completely consistent with capitalism.
Well, that's another issue, right? That's the same issue.
When the internet has done what it has always been trying to do, when it has kind of liquidated everything, when it's turned everything into a sort of a commodity that can be transferred through the internet, through zeros and ones, when it can turn every single part of the economy into just information,
right?
What is the relevance? What is the backing? What is the reason behind a patent at that point? Because it certainly isn't the person who invented it. It's not even the company that paid the person to invent it. It's this vague, just stamp of approval that you have to just get, that you get forever at this point.
God damn it. Ideas should just be used. Fuck. Why put... you have patent trolls, of course, that are a scourge. But,
are they really? I mean, this is one of those hypocrisies of capitalism. There is nothing that a patent troll does that major businesses don't do every single day, but they're legitimized by the fact that they're Google or
that
whoever.
They're big, like Apple and Samsung constantly taking each other to court.
Are they patent trolls? Yes. But they're also real companies that have a lot of money behind them.
Yeah, so a patent troll is the name for an individual,
some guy, some small businessman, let's call him for a moment, who has realized that there's a way he could possibly make money through his own initiative. Well, he's a patent troll.
Damn it, the internet.
It's a mess. It is. Just so the internet and technology and the way ideas are being shared is so riddled with contradictions in capitalism.
Well, it is, because it's like the technological capacity for the internet, the creative energies that it can harness, aren't necessarily profitable for capitalism, or in fact, in many ways, work against its profits. And so you have capitalism trying to restrict the internet in ways that it finds itself unable to do because of the way that the fucking internet works. And then you have other people that are actively, just trying to get free shit, which is kind of how it's also supposed to work.
Well, sure. Currently, in Canada, people are spending more money than they have already.
Yes.
And they're also, in addition to spending more money than they have, pirating movies, videos, etc. What the hell does anyone want us to do? We're already putting more into it than we have. That's unsustainable all on its own. There's no water you can get from this stone anymore.
Yeah, you want to charge me for downloading this song?
Yeah.
Really?
Fine.
I just paid
Put me in jail. Do whatever you want. It doesn't even matter anymore.
I just paid a $75 BC Hydro bill. Yeah. God damn it! You want me to pay for this fucking song? Fuck you.
Exactly. Well, this is the problem. I think this is the impasse capitalism is sort of finding itself in, is that it doesn't have a way to, squeeze more out of us, except through this sort of nitpicky bullshit.
It annoys people.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
And it pushes them. Every time I see a paywall on a news site, I'm like, well, I guess I'm getting my news somewhere else then. But news organizations also are struggling to have revenue, and newspapers are closing left, right, and center.
What journalist doesn't whinge on about how the public doesn't care about news media anymore, and yet at the same time is working for a company that itself doesn't really care about the media anymore?
Well, sure, and it's like musicians that aren't really paid for their music, and have no choice but to upload it for free.
And then within all of this, within this chaotic world of the internet, within technology, where is the line of ownership that makes even a little bit of sense? Where is that point? Because every libertarian, every person who supports capitalism will say that the creator deserves the right to use their creation in the way they wish to. Fine, you know what? Let's let them have that for a second. Where the hell does that even get drawn in the modern world? Where does that line go? What does it even mean to say you own an idea in a world in which an idea can be copied 1,000,000 times in a second?
Everybody benefits from everybody else's ideas.
Yeah.
Okay? This is exactly why, I repeat, Benjamin Franklin was against patents, is because he used inventions that other people thought of, and they benefited him, and he thought of ideas that benefited other people, and they used them. So why are we being so idiotic and trying to charge each other every time we use those inventions? And this is the problem of capitalism trying to wheedle its way into the intellectual property rights and copyright, which I think should be fucking expelled forever.
Well,
and cast into the dustbin of history.
You can say that. Look, I guess here's sort of bringing it back to a little less angry, ranty stuff. This is a result of capitalism. This is not a result of greedy companies trying to steal things. This is not patent trolls. This is not while they might be annoying.
What do you mean this?
Well, I mean, like, the situation, technology, and ideas and copyrights find itself in capitalism. All this problem we've been sort of going on about. This is not because that these copyright issues are not a result of some kind of aberration of capitalism. This is capitalism trying to address itself to modern technology. Libertarians, futurologists, people of that sort of ilk are completely see it the other way around. They see that technology will free us of these contradictions and problems. My contention, and I think similar to you, is that what technology is doing is exposing the limitations of capitalism over and over and over again.
This brings up a deeper question here, and that is the internet capable of being the tool of social change to make this, say, sharing economy, we'll call it, an actual reality?
To take it from the intuitive to the political. To take people... Because, I mean, people understand that there are limits to the economy. People understand that there are limits to the way we produce things. I mean, like I said, that every time there is, a person who does something that isn't compatible with capitalism, that's sort of an intuitive understanding. And I guess the question then becomes, how does the internet have an effect on that? Like, can it even? I'm not sure if it can. I mean, the internet, for all the good it does, for all the amazing things it is, I think that the problem inevitably comes back to the political one. I think that it comes back because to get sucked up into a pure technological sort of fantasy world is to make the mistake of libertarians and futurologists. Like, it's to make the same mistake that people have been making for hundreds of years. That there is a single fucking tool that will solve our problems.
Yeah.
The problem is not a tool, and it's not even so much ourselves, but the way we organize ourselves, the way we are producing goods socially, and so that unfortunately is inevitably going to be political, and that's, I mean, even by the admission of everyone, is the weak point.
Well, that's just it. I mean, the internet is more a reflection of the world around it than the internet can impact the world, right? Like I was saying before, how there's a tendency towards corporate monopolization of all sorts of things that have to do with the high-tech economy, and it's no different than any other aspect of the economy in that sense. So we have to fix society before we fix the internet. We have to fix the economy and how it's functions before we fix the internet. That is the key, because the internet exists in a space. It's not some virtual reality that's separate from the world that we live in. The characteristics that our world has is going to reflect itself on the internet in the same way that radio and television were completely overridden with corporate interests given enough time. And we're going to see exactly the same shit with the internet if we let it. And so I think in that sense, the defense of the internet and the ideals that it stands for can be one of the, say, transitional demands that can be put forward to rally people to social change. But I think that any change that we want to see on the internet needs to reflect in the society around it first.
Yeah, I traditional demand, certainly. I think that I do believe, I agree with you that that making the internet what it purports itself to be is a big deal for a lot of people. I mean, most people aren't involved in political parties, but almost everyone's involved in the internet. Most people don't involve themselves in many aspects of the economy, many aspects of society, but almost everyone is involved in the internet in one way or the other now. That the internet can easily be I think the crux of social change on that level, on the basis of saying, this is what's happening to the internet, this is where it should be going. And it's not because of the way the economy works, because of the way these business interests are influencing it and damaging it. And yeah, pointing out how it is in fact a real thing existing in 3D reality with everything else is important. But I think it's a distinction that needs to be made not just on the basis of those people who don't actually understand how the internet works, but also for people who do. Because I don't know about you, but I have found that the people who work with computers, work in the internet, have this very idealized version of sort of what their business and what their economy is capable of doing. They seem to, even people who understand thoroughly what the cloud actually is, as far as it being just complete nonsense, seem to still treat it as, well, it's different. It'll replace the real economy at some point. That it can transcend those mere material concerns and become kind of like the holy grail of economic activity.
Well, it is for the people that are employed in the industry, sure, but for the, say, 80% of us that aren't.
But what I'm saying is that not even for them, not even for you, not even for anyone, that the economy is the economy, and that the internet is just a part of it, that it is still real. Servers have to take up real space, and that means they have to pay for fucking brick and mortar and everything else, and it might be cheaper, and it might be easier, and it might even be easier to obscure from the public, like from even the people working in the industry, like this decentralized way in which much of the industry works, the tech industry. That can provide a kind of illusion of independence for everyone involved. But as you said, there is the inevitable problem of capitalism, of just reality, like that the world can't be escaped. That even on the internet, we have to worry about, whether it's the morning or not. Like you can't spend all day online.
Shut up. Yes, I can, and I do. Fuck you.
At some point, you got to go out for groceries. At some point, you got to pay your electricity bill. At some point, you have to pay your rent. Even just the basic stuff. But at some point, capitalism and the internet come to blows, and the capitalism, being the solid, stolid thing that it is, wins every time. When the internet, as like this amorphous idea, comes into conflict with real economic relations, it's those economic relations that win.
No, you're right, because the internet does actually exist only within servers and with people being paid to maintain those servers and actual economic relations between people and things. So you're absolutely correct, and I think that I think that the internet can be a tool for social change. It does connect people. It does allow people to communicate easily.
It's overthrown several governments.
Yes,
yeah.
Already.
Yeah.
And it's only 2016.
Yeah.
And
who knows what it will be.
So it should and will be continued to use in this way. But for those of us that think that it's some sort of holy grail that it will fix all and it's sort of some miracle cure, well, no. I mean, it doesn't actually change the relationships of property ownership, of economic ownership, of monopoly of capital, and all these things that are still existent in the economic system of capitalism that it's inheriting, right? It's not some new system. It's just a different way of doing things that exists within the system that already exists.
Yeah, I don't want to just doctrinarily quote capital, but it is just the next revolution in the means of production, and that's what capitalism has been doing through its whole existence, is changing the way in which we produce things constantly revolutionizing that. And I don't think that this latest revolution, the information revolution, the internet revolution, is a substitute for a socialist one.
No, it's not. But do you think that it could be a catalyst to make socialism possible?
Well, inevitably, however capitalism functions, the whole idea of a Marxist position on capitalism is that continuous revolutionary movement will promote a further political revolution that will then undo capitalism altogether. That's the idea, at least, and I guess that's where sort of we come back to the same problem I was mentioning a few times before, is that politics, right? That for all the good the internet has done in making our lives better and, to be honest, just more entertaining, it hasn't undone the basic problems of society. For all that we can talk about, dictatorships overthrown by the internet. How many dictatorships exist today that would be, by my standards, just insufferable? Like, if you were to look at the world in a purely rational sense, it seems like there's no reason for the world to be functioning the way it is. That with the internet, we are able to communicate with people all around the world, and yet that somehow hasn't just directly translated into the kind of intuitive understanding that people who promote the internet as a means of social change say it would. That there still has to be this political level to things, some kind of organization, some kind of method, a way of addressing the world in a coherent and consistent manner that the internet in and of itself just doesn't provide. It's just it's a medium at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, I think you're right, and I think that people should stop looking at the internet as sort of a end-all solution, but people need to actively take those reins and use it to their own ends instead of relying on it as sort of an easy fix.
Well, sure, the internet can be used for good the same way barricades can be used for good. It's a tool, it's a thing, it's something we need to use, but a barricade can be used to create a ghetto, and the ghettoization of the internet itself is, I think, still a real possibility. The turning of the internet into just a corporate sort of fantasy world where money is made and all you spend your time doing online is just looking at ads.
Oh, it's not just possible, it's likely.
Yeah,
it's
well,
inevitable.
given a lack of political will, that is where the internet will go.
So we need to use the internet as a political tool to incite social change, or it will be the death of us.
Sure, whether it's in the streets or on the internet, you need to be making a case for whatever ideas you actually believe in. And I guess that's sort of the ultimate takeaway from technology, is that the ideas we put into it are what is so much more decisive. It's like a photocopier, basically. It doesn't matter if garbage in, garbage out, right?
Right.
And politically, garbage in, garbage out. Like if we're not presenting a intelligent case for changing the world, it doesn't matter how wonderful the technology is that we're using to propagate our message.
I mean, I completely support the high-tech economy and like the good jobs that support it, right?
Yeah.
But it's difficult to retrain people that are not, say, computer efficient, where people say that the high-tech industry will create X number of jobs and, they just need these skills, but that doesn't necessarily account for the people that are put out of work because of the new automations and the new systems put in place. And it's the people that you create a lot of people that are, say, in their middle age or later age and don't necessarily understand computers very well, and it's very difficult for them to adapt into this new economy that they don't really understand, and it's not really their fault, and it's not really their responsibility either, and it puts a lot of people out of work that probably aren't going to find gainful employment in other sectors.
Well, here's the thing. We kind of referenced this before as far as people getting suckered into using ads and things like that. But I guess how much of that... We've had the internet since the late 1980s, 1990s, let's say.
Yeah.
That's a decent amount of time for a new idea to gain traction, and it seems kind of interesting to me that it doesn't seem to have done that. That it seems like there is still a substantial and increasingly not defined by age portion of the population that is computer illiterate. That there is this...
There are plenty of people that are young that...
Yeah, that
no
there's
idea.
this like portion of the population that doesn't understand how computers work and doesn't even particularly care.
And will never probably learn.
Well, that's the point I'm going to get here. You know, when you're talking about like what would the internet look like, what would technology ultimately look like in a future different society, I guess what I'm sort of just pointing out here is that a lot of our ignorance about the internet, a lot of our ignorance about computers, is entirely due to the usefulness of that ignorance for profiting from. You know, like a lot of those people are like the ideal consumers when it comes to the internet. They're the kind of people
the
who...
less they know, the better.
Yeah, they're the ones who always check off the box when it comes to, yeah, sure, install a taskbar on my browser. Why not? Right? I want to know what the weather's like. That kind of thing. Like the people who don't particularly care or are interested in what their computer or what the internet or what any piece of technology they own is actually doing. And while I agree, you know, while I think that portion is kind of getting smaller and smaller as just time goes on, I think that there is this pressure on the part of capitalism to keep people kind of just disinterested.
No, I think you're right. And also, I do think that related to that there's a myth that old people are bad at computers and young people are good at them. Some of the best, most amazing computer gurus are way older than me, and some of the most computer illiterate people that I've ever met are way younger than me. There is a general correlation to that just based on the exposure that people have had to technology, that by and large, though, that is false. There are people that are curious and want to figure out how computers work, and there are people that just want to use computers to do a thing and don't care how they work, and those people comprise the majority. And that's not wrong, but it does go to show that, you know, these skills are something that, you know, only some people are really attracted to and want to learn. I do believe in computer literacy. I do think operating systems should teach people more. I don't think that computers should just be idiot-proof boxes that just give people whatever.
Well,
they
we
want.
should be teaching it in schools, that kind of thing.
Well,
right?
we should, and in fact, these skills are something that should be really taught to everybody.
I guess the major point, I guess probably, I assume you as well as me, is getting at here is just that the fight to develop the economy, the fight to develop technology, is in no way incompatible with socialism, and is in fact that both of those things are necessarily tied together, and that the major impediment that the world is facing today with regards to what is impeding technology is in and of itself just capitalism. That the way that the profit motive is fundamentally inhibiting the function of the internet, undermining the ability of people to apply already established technology, inconveniencing every single person who just wants to watch a TV show. It's
laying off people.
Yeah, laying off people every step of the way. Capitalism is showing itself to just have completely fumbled modern technology.
Knowledge is power, and the more knowledge that we can share, the better.
Yeah, all I'll say, just to sort of cap it all off, is for all the threats of disaster that would befall us, I don't see anything that would really be all that terrible about an internet in which ideas were just shared freely.
I don't think that we'll have any issue with that, though, because no matter what the roadblocks that capitalism tries to put up in place, we'll always find a way around.
Yeah, well, and maybe that's the best thing we can say, is that, you know, push or shove, the internet will still be a grounds for this fight.